Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, show 266, recorded at Big Dog Studios in Eugene, Oregon. This show is made possible by Palmer Pond Botanicals, beautiful handcrafted herbals made with only the best hand-picked artisan herbals, and the best Atlantic marine botanicals are waiting for you at Palmer Pond Botanicals. Find them at therealherbmarket.com/shop/Palmer Pond Botanicals. Mud Pod Design House. Do you have a website? Are you happy with its traffic? The answer is no. Get a free website SEO audit from Mud Pod Design at mudpoddesign.com/free-SEO-audit. As the seed catalogs start to arrive and we return our thoughts from last year's harvest to the restfulness of winter and promise of spring to come, there's one critter too many of us completely forget to prepare for. Today we're talking with Alexis Chesney, Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine and author of Preventing Lyme and Other Tick-Borne Diseases, about planning and prepping for tick season. Now here are your hosts.
I'm Candace Hunter.
I'm Patrick Hunter. And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio.
Welcome back, Alexis.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It is good to see you today. Truly it is. It also means I have to think about ticks, so that's
Yeah, are you thought of as the tick lady now?
Yeah.
Yes, I've gotten that
Dr.
label.
Tick.
It's true.
So when we're starting to think about tick season, there's a lot of preparation we need to do, because Lyme disease and the other tick-borne disease, I'm going to focus on Lyme, and I'm going to, abbreviate and say Lyme disease, but I'm really referring to all the various tick-borne diseases. There's a lot of them. They're scary. They can be life-altering. A couple of them are actually deadly. We've got to prevent these. So what do we do?
Yeah, there are many ways you can prevent tick bites. So I am very happy to help educate people in doing that, so that they can prevent Lyme and other tick-borne diseases. Thinking about tick habitat, we can look at that first. And there's the way of avoiding it, right? And then also thinking about our yards and what we can do depending on what kind of land we might live on or work on or recreate on, in order to cut down on the tick population. So ticks love moisture, they love shade. So they're in the grass, they're in low shrubs, they're going to be in leaf litter or in stone walls, between fields and forest. And they're also associated with small animals like the mouse. So, thinking about all of that in the way of decreasing the tick population is important.
So would rats be problematic too? I mean, they're problematic for so many reasons, but
Yeah, any small animal can have a tick attach.
So definitely you want to clear all of that kind of stuff and not
debris and wood piles, like try and keep them somewhat organized. And
And
we'll talk about tick tubes, because you want to put those in places where the mice are.
Yeah, well, that was something I saw, but I was going to say, as you were talking about tick habitat, and I was like, oh, they're kind of like everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, keep on.
So what is a tick tube? Or a tick tube?
Yeah, so I love it because using these devices will decrease tick population by 93%, which is huge. And I see patients return from 1 year to the next, coming in saying how many ticks they have on their yard, and everybody's getting tick bites, their kids, and what are we going to do? And then they come back the next year and say, hey, we don't see any ticks anymore. It's pretty amazing.
Nice.
So the idea of these tubes, and in the book I go through actually how to make them yourself, because you can totally do that yourself, or you can purchase them. You can basically save like a paper towel or toilet tissue roll, something like that, and that's biodegradable. And then you can save lint from your dryer, or use some cotton balls or something like that, and soak that material in permethrin, which is an acaricide. It kills ticks or repels them. So if you ever use the permethrin, make sure to wear gloves and be careful, because it's toxic to our skin.
Okay.
So basically you're going to treat that material with the permethrin, let it dry, which takes an hour or two. and then you put it in those tubes, and then you place them out in mouse territory, which is basically tick territory, right?
Yeah.
So then the mice go in there, bring that lovely material back to their nests, and then it'll kill ticks on them and their family members. So it decreases that tick population. And mice are actually usually the first blood meal of a tick will be on a mouse. Okay. So there's 3 stages to the tick life cycle, and larvae are the first. They're born into being larvae, and then that tick will attach and get its first blood meal, often from someone like a mouse, and that's where they actually get the infection. That's where they first get Lyme and other tick-borne diseases. So from the mouse, it's transmitted to them, and then they become a vector. And then they might attach to you as a nymph, the second stage. They might attach to you or a dog, and they can actually then transmit Lyme and then also get something from you if you had it. But, it's kind of a two-way street, depending on whom they're attaching to. So it can really make a big difference to do these tick tubes.
Yeah, that sounds like that's really a huge tool that we could use. Is that, like, if you get those tick tubes and you live in an area, like you have dogs or cats, I mean, is this going to be harmful to other animals?
No, when dried, it's such a small amount that it wouldn't be a problem for animals. You don't want to spray the permethrin wet on, like you're saying, like not on our hands. And you don't, when it's wet, like some people do use pyrethroids or permethrin, which is under that category of pyrethroid, those kind of chemicals in treating the land. I don't recommend it just because it can kill bumblebees and some other insects when wet, right? So spraying this all over the lawn, and then you're going to be affecting insects that are flying and sitting on the lawn. But if you're really just targeting this one area in a little box where you're spraying your materials to then dry and put into the tick tube, it's not going to affect.
Okay. And once it's dry, then it's not going to harm the bumblebees or anyone else that much either. Right. Okay. Is there other things that you can do if you're uncomfortable using the permethrin?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So there's, for the tick tubes, I have not done anything else inside there. You'd have to apply it. Like I'm thinking of essential oils. They they don't last that long, so you'd have to go out there every few hours. So
it's unrealistic.
But there are essential oil sprays that you can find, like for the land. You would, again, if you use a larger amount, there are various studies showing just how effective it is. It's not as good as something like permethrin, but it does something, and there's also this fungus that's been used as a treatment for the land that affects ticks as well. So there's some natural options out there for the land. Absolutely.
Okay, so you've got your environment covered, and you've got a plan for that. Now, how about yourself? How do you protect yourself if you know you're going to be going into tick territory?
Right, yeah. So definitely thinking about the permethrin treatment of clothing. So treating your socks and shoes with permethrin decreases tick bites by 73 times. Wow. So that's pretty incredible. Yeah. So again, you can do that yourself and just be careful with not getting it on your skin, letting it dry. And then there's a place called Insect Shields that you can send clothing away to. And when they treat it with permethrin, it lasts longer. It lasts 70 washes. So if you spray your shoes, like I put all the shoes out, I spray them down, I put it on the calendar. So I do it every 6 weeks.
Okay.
Because it lasts only about 6 weeks. So you've got to do it again and again. So that would be a lot if I really wanted to do some outfits over and over again, right? So you can send certain things. Like I have some outfits that I send away to Insect Shields, and then they last a long time. Or thinking about things like sheets, like for a picnic. Think about, I want to go out into this lovely piece of land and sit on the grass. Well, sure. If you get your permethrin treated blanket or sheet, which I have in my car, always with me. So if somebody wants to do it, hold on, I'll be right back.
I could just
put in your backpack on a hike. It's great.
Every herbalist just rolling their eyes right now, like, oh my God.
Well,
I mean, there's no like, citrus spray or something natural.
There's an alternative to that. I see, like, thinking about using all of these different things in combination, I think is the best. And because permethrin is so effective, it's just hard not to use it. I've seen, people go through those processes, which I respect, maybe not wanting to use this chemical. And sometimes people over time say, the ticks are just so bad, and I'd like to start to use it now. But there is cedar essential oil. I use that a lot. There's a company, Cedar Side. So that's the one I used. That's very effective. And the thing about that is you just have to be a little more vigilant and apply it every 1 to 2 hours. But that's safe for your skin. It smells nice.
That'd be safe for your animals too.
Yeah, over 20 pounds. You can spray it on your dog.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is nice.
What about like your immune system? Because there was a term that you used in the book, prophylaxis, which to me honestly sounded like, putting a giant condom on. But I know that's not really what it means. Can you explain what prophylaxis is?
Yes, she told me that, and I just burst out laughing.
I had one patient who came in with he brought in a picture. It was amazing. This white, like, overalls that he treated with permethrin. So he was wearing all white, tucked in his pants to the socks. Treated with what you're talking about. That is an option. Prophylaxis. And actually, cryptolepis, an herb from Africa, has been used in this way. There's a study showing that it's been used for prophylaxis for malaria. So it's really wonderful that we have research on that. And so sort of applying that idea, to having something in our system already that's helping our immune system work in a certain way that makes our environment unfriendly to having Lyme stick around or other tick-borne diseases. And that also would kill the Lyme and other tick-borne diseases. So that's the idea of the prophylaxis. And so people, there are a lot of different levels of this. And now it's tick bite season. So, I see a lot of chronically ill folks, but then I also have a tick bite clinic. And I'm currently training another provider right now. And so we get a lot of people coming in, and it's funny, like the critical thinking about, okay, someone comes in with a tick bite. Are they symptomatic? Are they not symptomatic? There are all these levels of looking at what, where the person is on that path, hopefully not to getting Lyme. But there's also just stepping way back and thinking about, okay, I haven't even gotten a tick bite, and I can do some prophylaxis. So with high risk populations, for people that are out, whether it's their work or they just, live in a place where they're constantly outdoors and enjoying it for recreation, or they're farmers or they're loggers or they're, for whatever reason, at high risk of tick bites, then you could take an herbal formula during tick season, which we should define, because people think, oh, that's, like May to October. But tick season is actually whenever it's above 28 degrees Fahrenheit.
Geez, come on.
So for some of us, that might be every day of the year except maybe Christmas.
Oh, come on.
I know.
Like 1 week.
Yeah, so depending on your area, we have some mild winters, and then people come in with tick bites January, February. And then other years we have, much colder winters, and we might not see any for a few months. But I think that's important to keep in mind, like you're saying, to have people prepare for the spring for ticks, doing that sooner than later.
Well, yeah. And sure. I mean, especially with, the COVID of last year and the flus and other types of illnesses that we're seeing starting to really crop up, it seems to me that it makes sense to do stuff to prepare your immune system and take care of it. So are we talking echinacea? What are we talking? What kinds of herbs are we talking here?
No, actually, I know echinacea is so wonderful for a lot of reasons, but not for this so much. So you can take something that I call deer tick bite formula, and looking at that formula, which is based on mostly the ticks in my area that carry pathogens that then cause Lyme and other diseases. We're usually focused on that tick, but in the book I talk about all of the most common ticks in North America, and then there's a tick bite formula based on each of those ticks. So, whatever's right for you and where you live. But if you were going to take deer tick bite formula, then that would be cat's claw and knotweed, cryptolepis, and houtunia. And so those, I chose them and put them all together because each of them will treat a different pathogen. So like for Lyme, knotweed and cat's claw treats Lyme. Houtunia is for viruses like powassan, which is very rare, but still good to have that in there.
Yeah.
And anaplasmosis, which, we're seeing more and more. That's sort of like the second top tick-borne disease in this area in Vermont. And then you've got cryptolepis for babesia, because babesiosis I see more and more, and those are in deer. The babesia is carried in deer ticks. But then also now, most recently, not too long ago, maybe a year ago, there was a study showing that cryptolepis actually kills Lyme too. So that was exciting.
Nice. Yeah.
So there's that piece of like thinking about killing these diseases, these pathogens, but then they're the amazing, like with knotweed, Japanese knotweed. I mean, just the incredible immune modulation that it can do in the body. So whether it's Borrelia, which is Borrelia burgdorferi is Lyme disease, or one of these other pathogens, it's readying your immune system to do what it needs to do in the face of Lyme and what Lyme does to your immune system.
I have a new bookmark for you to add to your browser, therealherbmarket.com. This is your new go-to for all your herbal products. It is your one-stop shop. You can peruse the many stores from verified herbalists from around the country, allowing you to shop locally if you prefer, or to get an herbal from an herbalist that specializes in products you do not have access to. Visit therealherbmarket.com to shop for your next salve, tincture, or tea. Then make sure to bookmark it and come back. See them again at therealherbmarket.com. Would like Oregon grape or any of those type of, or elderberry or any of that, would that be at all helpful?
Well, I mean, Lyme is really interesting in the way it affects the immune system. So, those are not, some of the more traditional common herbs used are not the ones that really come up. So that was interesting. Back when I was studying, it was all these different herbs a lot of the time that I hadn't heard of or just heard a little bit about, didn't use much of. Like red sage. I mean, that herb is incredible. That's a salvia. So that and Baikal skullcap I love because it's kind of like an adaptogen for the immune system. So if we think of like usually I talk about adaptogens for adrenal herbs, helping your adrenal glands work better, like ashwagandha and rhodiola, holy basil, these kinds of herbs. But thinking about the immune system and the way that Lyme comes in and kind of turns off part of your immune system and then creates this cytokine cascade, which is just these cytokines, like all these communicator cells in the immune system. Yeah. So all that kind of happens, and then you get all this inflammation. So by using something like Baikal skullcap and red sage, that'll really bring that down. Like interleukin and prostaglandin, there are all these names that I can never keep straight, but you can look it up.
I feel a little better, actually.
They have some very specific ways of working, which is important, I think, when dealing with Lyme, because it has, that Borrelia bacteria has such a very specific way that it changes in the body.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you explain just a little bit about it changing its shape? Because
that's huge. Yeah.
I found that interesting, especially considering that when we talked about last time, you talked a little bit about Lyme disease being a disease that often, not always, but often causes people to make some big transformations for themselves, whether it's diet and exercise, that sort of thing, or if it's a spiritual transformation. I mean, it kind of really pulls us in that direction of major change. And the bacteria itself also potentially goes through radical change.
Always. It's always changing. I mean, one thing that's interesting, it has these surface proteins on it. So when it's in the tick, it's expressing certain surface proteins so that it can interact with being in the gut of the tick. This is probably very boring. And then,
gross, yes. Boring, no.
And then it goes, like when it senses that this tick has attached to a host, the Borrelia is able to move to the salivary glands of the tick because those surface proteins changed.
Yeah.
And then they're able to attach to something in the salivary glands that then brings it into the body. I mean, it's just it's so fascinating. It's so complicated.
It is.
And then once they're there in the human body, for instance, it's a very different temperature, pH, all this stuff matters, but it adapts. It adapts with all these changes from the tick gut to the salivary glands to the mouse or the human or whatever it is. And then it changes forms. So it is the spiral, which is in itself as a bacteria, pretty peculiar.
Yeah.
It's not a typical bacteria anyway. So it's got this very interesting spiral shape. Its genetic makeup is really interesting and different. And then, so it changes from that spiral shape and it kind of balls up on itself into this cyst or round form. And it actually needs to change into that form to get into the joints, which is one piece that I think is so important for allopathic medicine to understand, because all of the antibiotics that are used, most of them, the most common ones like doxycycline, don't get to the round form.
Yeah.
And where are most of the bacteria in people with Lyme, especially early on, we talk a lot about joint pain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're in the joints, they're in this round form. They're not being affected by doxycycline. So we need other things like herbs to get to them, to get to that round form. So that's huge in treatment. I see that all the time. And there's studies showing all this about the doxycycline and not getting to the round form. And then the other thing it does is it changes, or it doesn't change, but they kind of create a community and then create this biofilm around themselves. So this is another way that they hide from the immune system and the antibiotics and even herbs. So they can persist. The biofilm is fascinating. It's this community of communication, and they're, then creating these little satellite communities and throwing them off.
Like
this other
suburbs.
It's amazing. Yeah. These are survivors. They've been here longer than us. It's pretty incredible. So with treatment, we're always thinking about all those ways that it's surviving as well.
Are there things that you can do to help besides taking like various herbs and taking like the deer tick or the whichever tick appropriate tick formula that you suggest? Are there other ways you can prepare yourself? Like, is there specific nutrition that's better, or
like an acid diet or a basic diet, or
Yeah. So thinking about alkaline versus acid, you can think about that. Basically anti-inflammatory, right? Okay. So if we're going to try and create an environment that's not friendly to Lyme, in addition to using herbs, we can look at nutrition. So sugar and yeast and alcohol are the food for Lyme. So that's huge. That's kind of like a starting place.
The trifecta.
I know, all the fun things. It's always the best news. I'll talk about the long process or the long list of treatment with patients, and then I'll share that about the sugar and yeast and.
Yeah.
Oh no!
All the comfort foods.
I'll do all that, but you can't eat that.
Yeah, I'll take all the drugs. I'll take all the tinctures. I'll do everything you say. I got to give up beer. Okay, I'm out.
Takes a lot of discipline to go through Lyme treatment. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then foods like, sometimes people have sensitivities. Dairy or gluten can be more inflammatory to a lot of people. So we might discuss that. eating, and then not only what not to eat, right? Thinking about what to eat. Let's get lots of veggies in there. All those vegetables with antioxidants and vitamins and minerals we need. Thinking about all the colors of the vegetables, getting all those in, because all those have different bioflavonoids that are really helpful for our immune system and our body. Yeah.
I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking about some of the more nutritive herbs like nettles, oat straw, that kind of stuff, where you pack a lot of nutrition into, a simple tea.
Absolutely.
I think we're also sensitive now to nutrition, how it affects our immune system, those types of choices based on, last year with COVID and continuing, that we're getting more and more sensitive to it. And last year, 2 senators put in legislation for feedlots to stop feedlot production by 2040 in a response to moving to not only just a healthier diet, but healthier in people to keep our immune system much stronger. It's an interesting thing that we're all kind of thinking about it now. But it seems like we weren't. So,
absolutely.
Anyway. I didn't mean to end the conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That was a massive lull.
Well, I really think that Lyme disease was a harbinger for us, letting us know that change is coming. And if we don't get our butts moving and make adjustments, start making changes, that it's going to just intensify. And I think COVID was the next step, if you will. I mean, you know.
I mean,
they're not the same, of course.
No.
But they share similarities.
But Lyme disease has been around, like you said, for such a long time. And it was only relatively recently, in the last, 40 years that we've actually seen it, figured it out, knows that it's spiral shaped. It's all that. Do you know of any history before that? Did people just not even, did it have another name?
I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, it showed up as Montauk knee, Long Island, Montauk.
Okay.
It was discovered in basically around that area in Lyme, Connecticut, and then across the Sound on Long Island. So that was in the 70s. But before that, I mean, I'm sure people have had it. It's been found, they found that mummy that had Lyme. I forget where that was, but, they had found the actual bacteria, but I don't know, was it causing a disease in that person at that time? I think that's the question. Was it the same, strains that we have now? I mean, the diversity of Borrelia is pretty incredible. I mean, there are different species, but then there are also different strains within the Borrelia burgdorferi that causes Lyme. And, how has that played a part? How has that evolved over the years, perhaps, which somehow now is causing such a huge issue?
When I wonder if
sickness, creating sickness in humans.
Yeah, I wonder if the way that our environment has changed with higher levels of toxins, but other types of disruptions that we've been seeing since the 70s, and that's just increased through the years. And changes in diet. I mean, beginning before the 70s, but really from the 70s moving to the 80s and 90s, we saw a much larger swath of our population eating fast foods, eating out, eating packaged foods. Our diets really changed radically over the last 50 years. And I kind of wonder if that might be one of the biggest influences, the way that our environment and our diets and stuff have changed over.
Absolutely. Yeah, and stress, the kind of stress we have now.
Yeah.
How humans deal with stress.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be easier, wasn't it?
Yeah, right.
All this technology was supposed to make it easier. So, Alexis, how can people get a hold of you?
So I work full-time at Sojourns Community Health Clinic. So they're at sojourns.org. And then my website is dralexischesney.com. So I also have a private office and work with people by telephone and speak on the topic of Lyme and tick-borne disease. So you can find me there. And then if you would like a signed copy of the book, you can also find me there, or you can purchase that at dralexischesney.square.site.
I definitely will have all those links in the show notes. And I strongly advise folks to get a copy of Preventing Lyme and Other Tick-Borne Diseases. It's got some excellent information in it on how to identify ticks, which is a lot more important than I ever wanted to believe. And how to figure out what ticks and what potential diseases are in your area or the area that you're going to be in, so that you can take proper steps to prevent and protect yourself and your families and your pets, but yourself and your family.
I don't like ticks. Is there anything else that you can add?
That sounds great.
Okay. All right. Well, perfect. So, as always,
put an herb on it.
The statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.